Okay, welcome to War Room Battleground. We got a packed show tonight, a lot to get to. I want to start with Emerald Robinson. Emerald Robinson joins us. Emerald, you launched your new show today, the 9 o'clock in the morning. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. It's on Frank's Beach and Lindell TV. It's 9 a.m. Eastern Time until 10 a.m. Eastern Time, so right before War Room airs on Frank's Beach as well. And look, we're covering all the topics that corporate media doesn't want to cover, and talking to a lot of people who are blacklisted from corporate media outlets. That includes election fraud, vaccine side effects, and the Biden administration being bought off by China, just to name a few.
To talk to me about, before I get into your latest Substack, you've got all these issues you want to go through on election integrity. I want to get into that. I want to go back to this controversy about Fox and Newsmax taking money on the vaccine situation, because I know you were all over the vaccine situation. You kind of had a falling out with Newsmax about this. Has that been rectified yet? Do we really know the details of how much money they took of the $1 billion that the federal government got to spread a message? Do you think that message was a false message? Do you think it was an inaccurate message? And where do we stand with actually who took what money to do what?
Well, we don't have the dollar figure, the dollar amount yet. My team and I have filed further FOIA requests following on what the Blaze, who originally reported the outlets that did receive money. But if you'll recall, we talked about this last week. They didn't disclose the actual amounts that each network or each outlet got, saying that was it's citing a trade secrets exemption. But we have filed further FOIA requests. We've added more entities to the list, because what you actually have to do when you file these FOIA requests is list the names of the outlets or entities that you're looking for. We did get a response from the CDC, which, falls under HHS, and they have essentially told us, Steve, that this will be a delayed response because it is a complex FOIA request. So we're still trying to get more answers.
Okay, so that's still up in the air, and once you get it, you'll report that out, and because to me that's a pretty big deal, particularly the way that people like you and Cortez, these rock stars of our movement, were handled. I want to give people an update, and my staff, the great producing team here, is going to update me even more. But this situation in China, before I go to Emerald's Substack, this great thing she put out today of these questions she wants answered on election integrity on November 3rd. There was a 7-hour meeting. The meeting in Rome today was contentious. It was 7 hours long. It was very heated between Tiger Yang and the soy boy, Jake Sullivan. But in addition, the information coming out of China right now, and we don't have full information. We know that Shenzhen, the province of about 16 or 17 million people, is shut down. We know that Hong Kong has been shut down. This is because of a CCP type virus. Also, they just announced Beijing events have been shut down in Beijing, and the school system of Shanghai has been shut down. So we're going to get some more information on this before the end of the hour, and we'll come back to you. But something wicked this way comes out of China with this virus, and right now we don't know what it is. But those are three, obviously Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen is the railhead of the supply chain. So it's only going to increase the problems we have the supply chain right now. We're going to get back to that. We'll get more details about this contentious meeting. So Emerald, you, and I realized one of the issues you had over Newsmax was 3 November and what went on there, and also election integrity going forward. You put a Substack out that I thought was pretty incredible. Walk us through what's your beef, or what verticals, because we're going to have, following this, folks from Colorado doing the canvas. Remember, Peter Navarro's dictum, it's the canvas, not the count. So I want to go through this Substack of yours and walk us through the key highlights, particularly the questions you feel need to be answered.
Sure. Well, clearly I've been covering this for a while, but I sat down and I thought about all the questions that have not been answered, despite what the corporate media tells you, because every time that you read something about election fraud, a case that's going on in a particular state, whether it's Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, as there are ongoing questions in those states, corporate media always says, well, President Trump's unbased claims that the election was stolen from him. But look, a recent Rasmussen poll highlights just how many Americans don't feel confident in the past election or elections going forward. In fact, it's a majority of the Americans, and so that means it's not just Republicans. So I sat down and I thought about me in covering it, just me as a reporter covering it, how many questions I had. And I looked at all the material that I had saved, articles, and this is the list, and I put it on my Substack, emeralddb3.substack.com, and I cited most of my sources there. So whether it was chain of custody questions that are present in multiple states, particularly in Arizona and Georgia, and news on those fronts continue to come out, whether it was more votes than voters in Pennsylvania, or whether it comes down to the voting equipment, like is the case in Georgia and Pennsylvania, there are still outlying questions that just have never been answered, no matter how much gaslighting the corporate media does, and particularly when it comes to looking and inspecting this elections equipment. So essentially, this is a third-party vendor that should have to answer to state legislatures. They should have to answer to the American people as to whether their equipment is secure or whether it can be hacked. And so far, this one in particular, third-party vendor, has been able to, Dominion Voting Systems, have been able to stonewall attempts to really forensically investigate their equipment outside of a case in Georgia. So there's a big focus right now on something called the Halderman Report. And if you haven't heard of it, not that surprising, because there's a lot of people that don't want to hear about it. In fact, a judge in Georgia has sealed that report. And in it, a left-leaning Professor J. Alex Halderman, who testified in the 2017 Russiagate, so to speak, testimonies before the Senate Intelligence Committee about how hackable the elections are, talked about how vulnerable these machines were then. Democrats were okay with it then, right? Because they were talking about them possibly being hacked to have stolen elections for Donald Trump. But now there can't be any questions about these equipment. But this professor is begging at least the CISA, the so-called election security arm of DHS, of the United States government, to actually accept this report, to get the third-party vendor to look at it. And so far, the third-party vendor has refused to look at it. But why? And why can't, I think that's my biggest question, Steve, why the stonewalling on just making sure everything's okay? The forensics investigations, because if the elections are technically supposed to be run by the people, right? Supposed to be public elections. Why are private companies allowed to operate with a lack of transparency?
Haldeman is particularly radioactive because, as you said, he was called as a witness to show how this thing had been hacked and how Trump was really Putin's puppet. And now they don't want this thing out. I want to go back, though, in a second and I want to make sure we get her Substack out. Here's what strikes me in going through the 25 questions. There's still, the information's out there, but you're being gaslit about this. And some of the machines have not been answered because of the stonewalling, and the Democrats don't want to see any of this. Given your 25 questions and you going back and taking time over the weekend to review it before you put it up, how did Chris Krebs say that this was the most secure election in American history? And remember, let's be front. I think he was appointed by Trump. So he's a Trump guy in the Trump administration. And Bill Barr, who's selected, just came out in his book and said, and then on NBC in the interview said it's all, and I want to quote, it's all crap. It's all a piece of crap. And he told the president that. How do you square those two things with the questions as you went back and looked through all the unanswered questions, Emerald Robinson? How do you square those two?
Well, you can't. You just can't. Because there would at least be some way you could have some answers to these questions, but they're not. And I'll tell you on a personal note, and having covered, I was in DC at that time during all of this going on when Chris Krebs said this was the most secure election in history. I was talking to a lot of people at DHS that did not feel that way. And I was told that Krebs was a very good friend of Chad Wolf, and several sources indicated to me that was how he ended up in that position. And I also found that, lots of people around him were definitely not supporters of President Trump. In fact, they were very strongly supporters and very public supporters of now President Biden. And in regards to Bill Barr, what I found so interesting is after the election, everyone was trying to understand what was going on, and particularly was the question, why is the Trump DOJ not taking these claims of election fraud more seriously? And I had a very high placed source at the Department of Justice at the time, just right under Attorney General Bill Barr, who had previously thought very highly of him, had constantly told me what a great person he was. And I questioned for some time, if you'll go back and look at my reporting, I questioned that probably a year or so before even November 3rd about the true motivations of Bill Barr. And I kept asking this person about Barr. And what I learned from this person is that several other high-level officials, along with this one, have went to Barr following the November 3rd election and said, we have to investigate this. These are very strong, credible claims of election fraud. They went so far as they thought the machines, particularly this official, thought the machines should be inspected. And you know what Barr told this person, this one person in particular? He said, it doesn't matter. It won't matter now because they'll take so long to inspect the machines. And by the time, we do this, we'll be, essentially we're moving on. And this person said, but it matters for every election after this. And that's when they began to think very differently of Bill Barr.
Okay, you just brought up, and I'm going to put a pin on, we'll come back to Krebs, but you just brought up something, the point I wanted to get to. Bill Barr told the president, it's been reported, I think he only makes one tiny passing reference into his book. We're going to double check. He told the president they had done an investigation. He said, we have done an investigation. None of it's true. I want to see, and he can they can put it out now, or we can wait till we get to November 8th and get it after we win, take the House. This investigation, I think he lied. Has there been any? He told the president, investigation, it's all crap. There's nothing true. Do you remember that when you were reporting at the White House? Because right now he never wants to mention investigation. Mm-hmm. We want to see what DOJ actually did as an investigation. Where's the report? What's the investigation? Who was involved with it? Emerald Robinson.
Well, we never saw any definitive proof that there was an investigation, right? Outside of what Bill Barr was reportedly saying and what he told the Associated Press at the time and what he, reportedly told President Trump at the time. But I can tell you, every person I spoke with during that time said there wasn't anything going on. There was no real investigation in any state or by any means into election fraud. And there was lots of angry people from the White House, which I'm sure you know and have heard, who were calling over to the Department of Justice, demanding that something be done, only to get rebuffed. And even officials of the Department of Justice, I wouldn't say, there were the higher officials going to them, but there are also the people who are around. They were just really flabbergasted. They couldn't believe that the DOJ and that Bill Barr, who was supposedly the new sheriff in town, remember under Jeff Sessions, he was supposed to come in and wipe out the corruption in the DOJ and really reinstitute the rule of law and a dual system of justice. But they were saying that they couldn't believe that he wasn't doing anything. So to this day, we've still seen no definitive proof of the investigation that Barr suggests he conducted at the DOJ. Oh, and in fact, he was actually right after the November 3rd election. Even right after the November 3rd election, when there were so many questions for weeks, right, about the validity of the results and all these questions about, why did machines stop counting in the battleground states in the middle of the night? How, the dumps that happened in the middle of the night, and all these other questions, the Zuckerbucks, lots of questions that, are cited in my Substack. I was told that just a couple of days after the election, Bill Barr was already talking to the people he really liked at the DOJ, the high-level officials, about jobs that he could help them get post the Trump administration. So he had already moved on.
Well, listen, he didn't do anything on BLM or Antifa in the riots of 2020 where they burned down essentially the nation or many of the big cities, the anarchy and the chaos. He didn't do anything about BLM, and he didn't do anything from the hard drive from hell. Hard drive from hell was delivered to DOJ and the FBI in December of 2019. He helped to cover it up. No mention of that. And he had an obligation, particularly when the intelligence officials took out the full page ad in the New York Times saying that it was Russian disinformation. He had a responsibility to come forward and tell the nation the truth, that hard drive from hell was accurate. was accurate, had not been part of Russian disinformation, but it was actually the hard, as we all know now, they all admit now it was Hunter Biden's hard drive. Bill Barr was too cowardly to come forward there. I want to go back to something you said. You said you were reporting when we were over at the White House for Newsmax. You said that you talked to people in DHS around Chris Krebs, or you had sources around Chris Krebs that did not agree with his statement. Because Krebs, remember, Krebs is out in front of this. Krebs is saying this is why we're going to have the canvas here in a second in Colorado. But we had Gableman on last week. As all this information comes up in Arizona and in Wisconsin, people are going, how could this all happen? You have this huge firefight out in Colorado right now. How could this even be? How can it be disputed in March of 2022 when Chris Krebs went on 60 Minutes, went on the biggest platforms in media, Emerald, and said this is the most secure election from a cyber perspective in a voting machine perspective in American history. Emerald Robinson.
Well, I called over to the DHS, several people I knew over there, and I said, this statement from Chris Krebs, how does this line up with the department? Do you all back this? How do you feel about it? And off the record, I was told basically they don't agree with this statement, but they leave it as it's government speak, right? They always say this. Well, we might not clearly agree, but that is the department he handles. So we defer to CISA on this as they work on the issues of election integrity. And then even further off the record, they would just say, yeah, we flat out don't agree. But in the Trump administration, I'm sure you experienced this because you were in it. There was so much of the people who were supportive of Trump, who weren't trying to sabotage, who felt that their hands were tied. They couldn't do anything. They're like, oh, well, they control everything, even though it's the Trump administration, and they just can't do anything. And I do want to point out where Chris Krebs is now because it's very telling. So he was supposed to be the czar of election integrity, or let's say, or election security, right? But now he's at the Aspen Institute, which is particularly a left-wing censorship machine that is very anti-America first. So just look where he ended up, and I'll tell you everything before that.
So once again, we're going to send everybody to the Substack before we go. Give us the highlight. What's your people focus on? You went over the weekend and said, hey, this is bugging me. And you just come up with your research of all the notes you've got, 25 questions that you believe still need to be answered. What's the highlight reel before we bounce?
Well, look, it comes down to chain of custody, Zucker, bucks, and machines. And that's basically what is highlighted a lot in these questions. And in my show, what really prompted this is that I'm going back through my notes. I'm thinking about that time, and I'm thinking about, this is what we were asking then. Has anything come through on this? Because we're really going to highlight election fraud on The Absolute Truth, which is my show at 9 a.m. And when I sat and looked through everything in the notes for the weekend to get launched, I thought I really have to put this in a very succinct list with my sources and the articles. And this is open sourcing. This is not anything that's off the record. This is open source reporting. So you can click on the links and look for yourself. And I thought, I just have to make a defined list that people can go to and see for themselves.
Okay. We're going to put this up on all the chat rooms, all our live chats. And I want people to put it up on Getter. I want to hear your comments on this. So we can put it up. I want to hear people's comments. And maybe if you're out there, why don't we add to Emerald's list? This is her 25, right? Out on her weekend research for her launch of her new show. What I'd like to do is challenge the War Room Posse, and particularly the folks that tune into Battleground. They're into kind of the hardcore aspect of politics. Let's add to Emerald's list. We got 25 starter. Emerald gave us a big head start, but let's add to that list. And let's commit to ourselves that we're going to get answers. Okay. If this group, you've got 1,300 members of the War Room Posse right now that have volunteered and working away on the Pfizer documents. You've got, I think, 175 lawyers that are giving their time pro bono to go through this. So if we can get that kind of group to Pfizer, which is what we want them everywhere. We want franchises, verticals everywhere. Let's commit that Emerald started something here, and let's get to the bottom of it. She gave us 25. Let's add another 25 tonight. So let's get folks out there. We'll figure out how to coordinate this. Emerald Robinson, good luck with the show. I know it's going to be a big hit because you're a rock star, and so glad to have you out of the restricted environment you are in. You and Cortez are just two extraordinary individuals and two extraordinary news people. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. And yeah, I love Steve Cortez too. He's great.
Emma Robinson, her new show on Frank Speech, Frank TV is at 9 a.m. Okay. In the next half of the show, we're going to have Michael Patrick Leahy and folks over at Star News come in and talk about the districts that we're going to be fighting for, the starting 30 congressional seats, either held by Democrats or open seats. But look, we got so many fights all over the country, and we got great patriots doing it. There's big fights out in Colorado to get to the bottom of it. There's a new aspect of Colorado, which a canvas has just been completed. So I want to bring in Holly Kasun to discuss that. Also, Colonel Sean Smith, I think we're going to try to get him later. But Peter Navarro continues to tell me that it's the canvas, not the count. We saw that in Arizona. Remember, the Justice Department sent a letter on May 8th of 2021 to basically, 5 May 2021, when the process first started going out in Arizona. And what did the undersecretary over at DOJ warned anybody associated with the canvas, which they had the mandate to do, could come up for potential criminal charges. I know the folks in New Hampshire have been doing a canvas. The great team in Pennsylvania has been doing a canvas. These canvases are really what makes people's heads blow up, because it's the canvas, not the count. It's are there legitimate chain of custody American citizen voters are actually voting? Because remember, all votes don't count. Only certifiable chain of custody legal votes from an American citizen, they count. Okay, so let's bring in Holly Kasun. Holly, thank you for joining us here in the War Room. Talk to us about what you guys have been doing out in Colorado, because Colorado right now is a firestorm on all topics related to elections, ma'am.
Hi, Steve. Yeah, so I'm one of the founders of the U.S. Election Integrity Plan, and we're a civics group, nonprofit. We don't raise any money. We are just an association of people who got together and decided that we needed to get to the bottom of what happened in 2020 in Colorado. What had happened originally is we had some data analysts taking publicly available data and crunching the stats, looking at the results, and seeing that there were anomalies and stories that the data was telling that just could not be explained. And we figured the only way to really validate what we were seeing and what we suspected was to go out and canvass. So that's what we did. And it started before the word came out from the DOJ in Arizona. And so we kept our project very, very quiet. We did not want our canvassers hassled. We didn't want voters harassed and scared. And after months and months of man hours going door to door, a week before our canvassing was over, maybe even just a few days, Jenna Griswold comes out with a statement saying canvassing is a problem in Colorado, it's voter harassment, this and that. But unfortunately, her story doesn't hold, because we were basically done with months long of canvassing before she even knew what was going on. Hello?
Holly, I just had a sound problem there for a second. Let me ask you, was when the letter came from the Justice Department to Arizona, when that letter came in May 5th of 2021, were your people also a little bit intimidated when you saw that what they said and said, hey, if you're going around and you start asking voters, you could be violating people, I think, voters' rights or civil rights, and these could be held to criminal charges. I mean, the letter was definitely to suppress what was going on in Arizona. Did that also send a chill down what you guys were up to at the time?
It did not, because part of the work that we put in to do our canvassing started at the very, very beginning. We looked at all of the laws, we looked at the statutes, and we designed our canvassing program from tip to tail to hold up to the law. And our goal was to make sure that whatever result we found in our canvassing was going to hold up in court. So we knew exactly how to follow the training procedures that we put in place in order to follow the law. So we kept going with our work, and we knew that if we made a big deal about it publicly, we would get hassled, thwarted, whatever you want to say. But we didn't want to stop, and so we just kept going.
So where do we stand right now with your canvas? Well, what's the scale of it, and where do we stand with this report? And what are you guys going to do with it? Clearly, Jenna Griswold, who's petrified about everything that's going on out there, and I think is next to Katie Hobbs. I mean, it's a pretty bad. Raffensperger, Hobbs, and Griswold are kind of the trifecta of corrupt and incompetent election officials. Where do you guys stand right now with this canvas?
Well, the canvas is finished, and what was published just a few days ago is the final result. And I think what needs to be highlighted is that this canvassing report and our program has been a model for the nation. USEIP has distributed playbooks and training and all sorts of programs to help other states do their canvas.
Why don't you hang on for 1 second, take a short commercial break. We're going to be back with Holly Kasun out in Colorado to go through canvassing, how to do it right, what it means, and the impact this is going to have. All next in War Room Battleground.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back. War Room Battleground goes back out to Colorado. Holly Kasun. Holly, once again, why do you say your organization's got this down on canvassing and you guys are the new national model? Walk us through how you put this together and what's the punchline out in Colorado? Your canvas shows what about the 3 November election?
Well, the reason why our canvassing model is the model for the nation is because of how it's designed. We had PhDs, mathematicians, statisticians, retired military officers, and corporate training experts come together to design this particular methodology for canvassing. And what it did is, by design, we were able to do a statistical sampling of our canvas that allow us to make assertions about the state as a whole. And what that ended up showing is that 1 out of every 10 Colorado voters has been impacted by election irregularities or anomalies. And the numbers are staggering. If you look at how this extrapolates to the state, that's hundreds of thousands of voters.
So has Jenna Griswold, have you guys presented it to Jenna Griswold? Have you gotten on the calendar of the Secretary of State? I would assume a Secretary of State would want to know this. Have you gotten on the calendar of Jenna Griswold?
We're trying. She doesn't answer our calls. She doesn't like us at all. In fact, she really doesn't like the people of Colorado. She doesn't want to hear from the voters. She doesn't want to hear from her constituents.
But sir, she's the Secretary of State. She will not take a meeting? Have you contacted her? Have you talked to her staff? Have you gone and briefed? Maybe your first meeting's not with her. I'm sure she's busy, but have you gone to her? Is her staff open to have any of this analysis put before them?
She doesn't answer our calls, but
Okay, we just lost Holly Kasun. Can we do we have Michael Patrick Leahy? Is he ready? Let's bring in Michael. Sorry, we lost Holly Kasun there with a bad connection. Let's go to, we've got Michael Patrick Leahy and we've got Aaron Gulbransen from Star News Network. Hey, Aaron, I want to go to you first. We had on the show this morning, made a big deal about Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, showing a real profile and courage and not being one of the 42 people that signed, one of the 42 senators that signed this letter to Biden to send MiGs from Poland into the Ukraine, which actually could exacerbate this conflict over there, and it could actually draw us into a shooting war in the Ukraine. I know he came to a tarmac in Tennessee. You're out there live. Did you get a chance to question him about this kind of what I consider a heroic move?
Yeah, I got to ask the senator why he didn't sign on to the letter, and he had a very interesting response. He just simply doesn't trust the Biden administration. He also went on to talk about how, the United States is essentially on two sides of this conflict. You've got, okay, we're rooting for Ukraine. That's my words, not his. And funding Russia, but with the oil stuff. So we're playing both sides on it. But yeah, the senator was very clear that he doesn't trust the Biden administration.
When you say on both sides of it, I mean, we're trying to get arms and we just passed $14 billion in this spending bill that's not paid for. But at the same time, Western Europe is buying, was it 2/3 of their natural gas and heating their homes from Russia? Is that what he meant?
Yeah, exactly. And then I talked, and of course, shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, all the failures of the Biden administration, taking us away from being energy independent in the United States to energy dependent. So created the situation the way it was.
By the way, my producer, I want to make sure if we get Holly back up, just somebody tell me and we'll try to get her back on. Don't just slip me a note. Okay. You've done the reason that you guys are up here and we got Michael Patrick Leahy about to come on and join us is that you're the congressional reporter for Star News Network. You've done analysis of the 30 districts held by Democrats or open seats that is going to be the focus of Star News. You're going to do polling in these districts, all of that. Walk us through these districts, and if we can put them up on if we can get them up on the screen, I'd like to do that. Walk us through how you came to these, because some of these are D+10s, D+12s, I think a couple of 16s in there. So how did you guys select this?
Oh, I think we're only as high as a D+7 in one of them. Basically what I did was I looked at the redistricting lines, and of course some of the vast majority of these districts are Democrat incumbents which are being targeted for defeat, or the Democrat fled the seat because the redistricting actually did its job. Two districts I did want to highlight, because we're segueing from the Ukraine issue, is the Democrat in Democrat in New Mexico actually said that she believes that love will drive Vladimir Putin out of Russia. So she's definitely one to go, and that's Congressman Fernandez. But we look at what the districts are doing, the money that's involved, the outside resources that are needed. I mean, you look at Arizona, there's a district that R+15, Arizona 2. Now, some of these numbers have changed. The Florida redistricting hasn't been completed yet, and we'll get to see if they'll actually make some of these districts more Republican like they're supposed to. New Hampshire, since we did discuss this a couple of weeks ago about how a lot of these states and their state legislatures have failed in making the districts more Republican and opting either to play it safe or they've been getting their rear ends kicked in court. New Hampshire is doing its job. The Republicans in New Hampshire are doing their job. They are trying to they have two Democrat seats right now. They're trying to make one of them Republican, and they're looking at making it, I believe, an R+11. And right now, it's a D+2. So we're talking about New Hampshire's first congressional district, and the incumbent Democrat is Chris Pappas. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're gonna have Boris and some of the other people working on this tomorrow, talking about the sense of urgency Republicans are having. Because remember, we talk in this show every day about how we have a unique opportunity to take down the Democratic Party as a national political institution. And that means down ballots also. But absolutely essential, you have to come away with the House. Once we control the House, right, you can thwart the entire Biden agenda. Nothing can happen. D+7, and I hear that the intensity level is giving us like an R+5. I think Richard Barris is going to be on tomorrow morning to talk about some polling he's doing, R+5, which he's never seen in a generic ballot at all. Do you believe, you're right, I double checked, actually it was another analysis looking at people going to D+10, D+12, D+ like even 15s. You stopped at D+7. Do you have, the primaries are obviously very important here, but what are your odds right now, do you think, as you look at it and have done the analysis, that we could sweep all 30 of these seats?
It never happens in a perfect year, but I think we have a good chance of sweeping at least 80% of them. That's my prediction in March. Yeah. Yes, sir.
In March, 80%. What is, you've been at this for a while. What's the level of intensity you're seeing out there? We just left Ben Berquam down the Rio Grande Valley. They couldn't be more jacked up down there. What is your sense of intensity level among Republicans?
It's highly intense, and all you need to look is how ticked off everybody gets when they go fill up their gas tank. And it reminds them every single time that there's an election coming up in November. And as a group I used to work for, had a sign that said November is coming. And that's the definite consensus that I feel in everybody I talk to around the country, here where I live in Tennessee. But yeah, it in terms of attitude, it feels a lot like 2010 after Obama passed Obamacare.
By the way, that was the big Tea Party sweep. And
Yep.
And the guy, Michael Patrick Leahy, knows about that since he was a critical part of the foundation of the Tea Party. I think we won 63 seats that year. It was one of the most historic sweeps ever. Aaron, how can people we're going to have this list up. We want to send it out to everybody. How can people follow your reporting?
You go to the TennesseeStar.com, look me up, Aaron Gulbransen, and you can also find me on Getter, Aaron Gulbransen.
Aaron, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming on. Before we go back
sir.
to Michael, because I want to finish with Michael, I want to go, do we have Holly up? Because I want to get Holly, we had a technical problem and lost you. But seriously, why is someone on the staff? I understand she may not be taking your calls, but this report was done, citizens in the country. And hey, maybe the report's totally wrong. Maybe your analysis is totally wrong. Maybe you didn't know what you were doing. Maybe somebody wrote an algorithm that was wrong and had a mistake. But why won't the Secretary of State's office or staff, if she's too busy, why would they not take a meeting with you? You're citizens of Colorado, correct?
Yes, it's a citizen-generated report, 100% volunteer. Nobody was paid to do this. I don't know why. I mean, I can take a couple guesses, but the results are just absolutely damning. And they fly in the face of every assertion that the Secretary of State has thrown out since 2020. I mean, in the report, we found fake voters. These are voters that did not cast a ballot, but the Secretary of State's own election records show that a ballot was cast in that voter's name. Now, we've also found lost votes. The voter did cast a ballot, but records showed that no ballot was cast. So that's the opposite. We found illegal votes. The voter did not live at the address indicated at the time of the 2020 election. We found voter data manipulation, where the voter's party affiliation changed without their authorization. And I can personally attest to this one. It happened to me. My party affiliation had changed and I couldn't get it changed back. And the reason why I figured this out is because I was going to be an election judge and a poll watcher, and I needed to have my affiliation correct for training. And I also received multiple ballots myself in different counties. So the final thing that we found, among other anomalies, but these are the big 5 categories, were that the voter database was manipulated. Now, what this looks like is the voter did not reside at the documented address in the voter database at the time of canvassing. But then months after the canvassing, the voter reappeared on and registered at the same address. So what that suggests is that voters were put into the system and potentially taken out at certain times and for certain reasons. We're not sure why, but this definitely deserves a deep dive investigation.
But hang on. You did all this work. You've got this citizen-based group. You're a civics society. You're not aligned with any political party. Have you gone to the local election officials? Right, you got the Tina Peters controversy out there, which is a side issue. That's not for today. But she's an election official in Mesa County. There's lots of Tina Peters in Colorado. Every county has an election official. Have you guys gone where the canvas shows that there were anomalies or problems? Have you guys approached those? First of all, have you sent a report to them, and have you tried to arrange a meeting?
Yes, that's what's exciting about what's happening in Colorado. The USEIP has set up a complete program for how to present this report to your local election officials, the county commissioners, the county clerks, and their election administrators, and also legislators. So this week, every single one of these elected officials is going to receive not only the Colorado report, but the Mesa, 1 and 2 reports that came out of Tina Peters' backups. And also there's a whole program that we have set up with basically action steps that Colorado citizens can present. And a lot of it has different asks for each type of elected official. The county clerks can't do the same things as the county commissioners and the Secretary of State as examples to rectify the situation. So all of these officials are going to get a lot of outpouring of interest and requests for actions this week.
When we say a request for action, so this is why we want to get to this report right away, because it is going to get to be a big deal out there. But the primaries in Colorado are when, and then you got the general election in November. What are the 2 or 3 actions you believe must be taken, having done this canvas, from what you've seen from the analytics? What are the 1, 2, or 3 things that must be done to guarantee that we have a safe election in Colorado? And then how is that going to get done?
Yeah, well, there's 3 things. One is we have to get rid of decentralized voter rolls, the score system. By having all of that data centralized and under the control of the Secretary of State, that opens up the whole system to massive vulnerabilities. And I believe that's where the statistics and the analysis in the report leads us. That's one of the areas. The second area is to get rid of mail-in ballots. Now, in Colorado, we were one of the first states to take universal mail-in balloting seriously. And I think we were third after Oregon and California. But what we're proposing is that ballots can be mailed out, but we're suggesting that people have to return the ballots in person with ID and signature verification at the time of the ballot being turned in. And we also want hand count ballots, paper ballots on the precinct level. And that means getting rid of the machines, as Mr. Lindell talks about. But it's more than getting rid of the machines. It's this whole architecture of fraud. These 3 areas are the places where they must be solved to get back to free and fair elections that the citizens are in control of.
Okay, so the first step is you completed this, very laborious. You did all this. You did the analytics. You've gotten the report. I want to make sure I want to push this report out, be a force multiplier. I want you to go through it. We're going to put up on our getter for people to give us questions about the report. And we'd like to have you guys back on to answer the questions people have. But you've got, you're promulgating this out to all the state election officials, to everybody, the big push. It seems, don't take this the wrong way, it seems almost Herculean what you have to accomplish. When you give that list of what needs to be done, change the mail-in ballot system, get rid of the machines and do a hand count. That's just not going to get done between now and November. Would you agree with me? Unless there's some miracle in Colorado, because Democrats like this system. This is what Democrats do. This is why they, and I realize you're not partisan, but this is the way the Democrats steal elections. Let's be blunt about it. This is how they steal elections all the time, right? With the mail-in ballots and the no signature verification, and just want any ballot to come in and count, which is not certifiable, not legal, not chain of custody. So how can you convince citizens out in Colorado it makes sense to vote if it's going to be very tough to make these changes by November, ma'am?
Well, you're right. It is a Herculean effort, but there are representatives and groups all across Colorado in every single county that are working on this. We've had this whole infrastructure in place since 2020. And so there are very active groups that are ready to go. And just because a county has the machines, it does not mean they have to use them. You can just not use the machines and go back to hand count paper ballots on the precinct level. And Colorado has procedures already legalized in our Constitution, because we used to do it that way before the machines came into existence in around 2015. So there aren't really that many excuses, at least for keeping the machines in place. And we also have procedures coming for hand count paper ballots, showing the cost, the time it takes, and the manpower it takes to be able to do the hand count procedures on the precinct level according to the law. Now, the centralized voter rolls, that's mandated by HAVA, but that doesn't mean that county commissioners and county clerks can't maintain their own voter rolls and give a read-only copy of the voter rolls back to the Secretary of State as a backup, as a way to check, but have the responsibility of maintaining the voter rolls and keeping them clean and maintained on the county level. Those are the things we're talking about. And a lot of it doesn't take anything but persuasion, because the rules and the laws in Colorado already accommodate the possibility for this to be legal.
Okay, Holly, how do people get to you? How do they get to you on social media? How do you get to the group, and how do you get to this? How do you get to this great report? We've got about a minute.
For the report, go to useip.org, and it's on the homepage, and it's also in the news section. I believe we are also on Facebook, useip.org, and we're part of the Cause of America network. So if you're reading about this or interested in getting involved, you can go to causeofamerica.org to sign up and get involved with in your own state. And I do have a blog. It's called Holly at Altitude, and I do deep dive reporting on political issues mostly in Colorado, but I do ladder it up to national stories.
Holly, thank you very much. Holly Kasun, thank you. Kasun, thank you very much for joining us. Real honor. Great work.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, Leahy. This happens to us a lot. Michael Patrick Leahy, we're going to get to you tomorrow. Leahy.
Here.
Leahy, you're,
this is the answer in 60 seconds.
Give it to me. Hit me in 30 seconds.
Dems 222.
Do it.
Republicans 211. Nets gain a 7. Republicans get control of the House. That's the bottom line. And it looks like we'll pick up 30 to 80 this year.
I'm going to see you tomorrow. Michael Patrick Leahy, Star Network. The Star News Network has got 30 seats they're focused on. We're going to get to the bottom. We got Richard Barris tomorrow talking about polling. They're going to have polling. This is the intense kickoff for 2022 right here. Michael Patrick Leahy, thank you very much. Everybody, thank you. See you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. back in the War Room.